A good Erev Shabbos. We find three levels of righteousness mentioned in Midrash Tzena Urena. The first one is a tzaddik, a righteous person. Even better than that is a tamim, someone who's complete, not missing anything. And the third category, the highest level, is someone who walks with God. Mithalech, walking together, specifically with Hashem. Noah, the hero of our parsha this week, has all three qualities. At the same time, we have to wonder whether the expression damned with faint praise might apply to Noach, depending on how you view it. There are in fact two opposing views about Noach, seeking to understand what exactly the Torah means by introducing Noach as Ish Tzadik Tamim Haya Bedorotav, a righteous man, perfect in his generation, that it says he walked with Hashem, Mitalech im Hashem. Rashi quotes two schools of thought on this. One saying that Kol sheken ilu haya bedor shel tzadikim, in a generation of depravity, he was a righteous person, and had he lived among the righteous, he would have been that much more outstanding. From that point of view, pretty impressive guy. And yesh darshim leganai, says Rashi. Others read this to Noach's detriment. Lefi doro hayatzadik. Compared with the lowlifes who were his peers, he was a good guy. But ilu haya bedora shel Avram, if you would have put him in another generation, like for example Abraham's generation, like haya nechshav leklum, he wouldn't have been impressive at all. We look at ourselves and we see first our standards of behavior and values in and of themselves, and then based on this Rashi, we might say that you can't ignore a contextual reading of values. In other words, how does someone behave in comparison to others around them? What might be community standards, and how do those actually matter? In a way, we're back to the good old question of, isn't it enough just to be a good person? And we wind up with the good old Jewish mode of answering a question with a question. What does it mean to be good, or to be a good person? Rav Hershel Schachter of Yeshiva University takes our question up a notch with an interesting Gemara in Ksubas that sheds some light on these questions, and at the same time touches on a memorable element of our parsha this week, Noach, and even the bow ties. I'm not wearing my bow tie now, but I will be hopefully on Shabbos. Some of us will be wearing on Shabbos too. Recall that from the parsha, the rainbow was shown to Noach after the flood as a sign of God's promise never to destroy the covenant again. The inference is that when we see a rainbow and we make a bracha, that God is faithful and keeps his word, that is a reminder that humanity may well be deserving of much worse treatment than we're actually getting. That thought should humble us. The Gemara that Rav Schachter quotes goes like this. It says, when Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi passed away, he was greeted in Shamayim by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Remember that the Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, was such a positive influence on his generation that no rainbow was seen during his lifetime. At some point, we have to discuss all the pictures that were posted to the internet the day after the Queen died of many rainbows, even double rainbows spotted around the UK, but another time. So Rabbi Shimon wants to know if there were any rainbows during Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi's lifetime. In other words, he asks him in a little bit of a roundabout way, did you influence humankind in such a positive way that they never merited that dubious omen, that sign of doom of seeing a rainbow? Rabbi Yeshua said, yes, there had been rainbows in his lifetime. Rabbi Shimon noted that his new neighbor must not have been such a great tzaddik then, because a great tzaddik influences the whole generation for the good, inspires them. And in his merit, that generation would have been spared from seeing this sign of the covenant, God's brit with humankind. After relating this story, the Gemara comments a little historical note. In fact, there were no rainbows during Rabbi Yeshua's lifetime, but he didn't want to take credit for it. Lo achzik tevus l'nafshai. If he would have told the truth, it might have sounded like bragging. And even at that point, when his earthly life had come to its close, Rabbi Yeshua did not want to sound arrogant. Interesting. there's a view that a Torah scholar has the latitude to be, let's say, less than, disclose less than the complete set of facts when it comes to his own scholarship or piety, so that others won't know necessarily of his acumen or his deeds. This brings us back to the question of righteousness in relation to our social milieu, and the next level question of how we influence those around us. What is our calling? Is it simply to mind our own business, do what we're supposed to do, and not mix into other people's affairs, not let them mix into us too much? Or do we have to call out those who are behaving in a subpar fashion, rebuke them, get them to do better? Well, that's a tall order. In Noach's case, we know that there was time for him to attempt to have some influence on those around him. Building the ark was no simple project like putting together a bookshelf from IKEA. It may have taken Noah 120 years to build this vessel, in which time people might have asked questions, scratched their heads, wondered aloud, what exactly is that guy doing? Why was it necessary? And all that. At some point, Noach might have mentioned the deplorable state of human interpersonal relations and how that threatened the very existence of humanity. There were no blogs in those days, no reply all emails, send to whole list. But whatever attempts he made to encourage his peers to change their ways seems to have had very little appreciable effect. How much of that is Noah's responsibility? Well, the fact is, he was given such a long stretch of time to finish the project that might indicate that he could have done more. In the course of that long span of years, God hoped that some passerby would have had their curiosity piqued by the appearance of this gigantic ark in his driveway, according to Rashi. Apparently no one did. On the one hand, Noach was hardly going from door to door rebuking people for their moral oversights and offensive. He was leading a life for that time of building the ark that showed that he was thinking of other things. His mind was in a higher place. He appreciated that great cataclysmic change was at hand, and the lifestyle he led of building was supposed to be assigned to those around him. Unfortunately, no one picked up on it. Could he have done more? Perhaps. He's called a complete person, a righteous person in his generation. But look at the generation, will ya? Yeah, compared to them, Noah did good. But perhaps he could have done better. One step would have been clearing his throat, pointing towards the ark, then murmuring out loud, I hope this ark holds up during the flood. Somehow or other, getting the message out there that the need was great and the hour was short. Some say the Teva itself was the advertisement for Teshuvah. Teva is an ark, but it also means a word. In words, Noah sought to preserve himself and his family, and in words, he tried to elevate those around him. Words of prayer, words of peace, words of apology and reconciliation. Ultimately, it seems like the generation didn't pick up on it. They lived up to, or they lived down to, their reputation. There's an interesting Levush, who himself was a descendant of Rashi, which says that the two opinions of Noah that Rashi brings were both true, and in fact one complements the other. The fact that Noach was righteous in his generation was true, not only compared to his peers, but on his own. He answered the call, he did what had to be done, but it wasn't enough to affect the others. His service was great and mediocre. Had he lived in the time of, say, an Abraham, he would not have received so much credit, because an Abraham not only lives life as he's called to, but also manages to have an influence on the world around him. We'll see it in coming parshas. So the call to us is twofold. First, to be tamim, to be complete and proper in our conduct, to strive towards a level of holy and purposeful, meaningful living that's always pointed in a higher direction, even though it's a lifetime's work. And as long as we're alive, it's never complete. The other half of the equation is to do this in a way that is subtly, yet undeniably effective at preserving and changing not only ourselves and our own little ark, but those around us too. Nobody appreciates a zealot, but people do appreciate a sincere, consistent, and genuine role model. Rav Kook explains this all quite beautifully. If you have any friends who are skeptics, they might appreciate this. You look at us talking about the Parsha and the rainbow, and you say, friends, The rainbow is just a function of physics. Light refracts through the ambient water in the atmosphere, and it has the effect of a prism. That's the light. We say exactly. That is precisely the point, and that's why the rainbow that we're thinking about this Shabbos in particular is such a powerful and potent reminder. Before the flood, humanity was younger. Life was simpler. Our own minds and hearts were enough to guide us. But you see what quickly happened? Some people figured out they could use their powers to the disadvantage of others, causing detriment and hurt. And before long, the whole world was up the creek. At that point, clearly our feelings were no longer enough to guide us. We needed external truth, guidance, divine inspiration, if you will, to tell us not only right from wrong, but also just because you can get away with something doesn't mean you should. A beautiful and appropriate representation of that, Rav Kook explains, is that God's light must penetrate and refract through the physical world. Short answer to a big question, it's not enough to be a good person. We have to make sure that godliness permeates and shines through the smallest droplet of physicality in our world. That's what the rainbow is. That's what mitzvahs are. The creating and sustaining light of God shining through the opaque filter of the physical world. Allowing that light to shine, making it happen, that's our calling. And if we do it right, it'll be so inspiring, no one will fail to be moved by the sheer beauty of it. People will take pictures of it and send them to each other and post them on the internet. In the firmness of our convictions, the consistency of our commitments, and the sincerity of our devotion, our tevot, our tevas, our words of friendship, encouragement, support, prayer, praise, and appreciation will purify the very air around us and allow the light to shine through and continue to bring light to a world that has such a great need for it. May God strengthen our hands and our hearts, and may the rainbows through the rainy days ahead inspire us to fulfill our part of the covenant. Shabbat Shalom.